This week, we talk about Xbox potentially bringing new storefronts to their console, a surprising bestseller for 2024 so far, Phil Spencer hinting at the rumored Xbox handheld, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that new Beautiful Bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 25. I am your host, the man whose next gen will be a handheld console, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who has sold more on PC than consoles, Justin, better known as I Am Zeracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
Well, it is going pretty well. I just got back home over this past weekend because throughout the previous week I'd actually been at my sister's house. So finally back. Good to be back. Although on Sunday, even though I think I mentioned this last week, my niece and nephew's birthday was the previous week and we went to the aquarium, but this week we actually had their birthday party and they both were very excited. They both enjoyed it and they had a lot of fun. Had plenty of cake, but it was a good time that we had there. And yeah, that's pretty much been the extent of I guess all of my excitement and whatnot. But how have you been?
Not too bad. Just out of curiosity, how old are your niece and nephew?
4 years old.
4.
Yep.
Can't believe. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I'll say, and in case like you were wondering, like, yeah, they are twins.
No, I figured that out when you said their birthday. I figured they have to be twins, and that makes a lot of sense. So, but yeah, my week's been pretty good. It was very busy, of course, especially the last, the end of last week, since I had to get a bunch of stuff ready before I did my 24-hour stream, and of course, my 24-hour stream was. Well, it was 24 hours of streaming. Most of it went pretty well. I reached, my goal of $300 raised, and got to play a bunch of games. The last 3 hours were a real struggle. It was like maybe I think the last maybe hour, a couple people hopped on and were chatting, and that helped a lot. Having some people to talk to. While I was doing that, just having my brain engaged a little bit more. But either way, made it through and basically got myself back in sync, with sleep schedule and all that. So yeah, but pretty good. My in-laws left Monday morning, so. It's been, although I liked having them around because it was helpful with the kids and everything else, and it's good to see them. It's also nice to just have the house just us because it just feels a little more peaceful, I guess, and not like my in-laws are noisy or anything. Just I don't know. It's different. It's always different when it's just us because it's more like routine. We can do things the way we normally do them. There's no extra people around. And you'd think that, having their own separate bedroom in the front of the house that, completely separate from everyone else, that it wouldn't feel as tight. But occasionally, sometimes it just feels like we're running into each other all the time. So that's just the way it goes. But all that being said, what have you been playing this past week?
Well, I've been playing quite a bit, and actually primarily just been on my Steam Deck since I was away, but tried out some new stuff, tried out getting to other stuff, but played some more BioShock and making some progress in the game. It's definitely not, since I'm obtaining more ability, since I'm learning more about the mechanics, things are definitely going smoothly. Interesting enough though, at least based on this clip that I'm showing, for some crazy reason, I guess there was some turret that shot a rocket near Big Daddy, and for some reason the Big Daddy started being aggressive towards me, even though its helmet didn't turn red until after I attacked it, but I don't know why that happened, but I just thought that was something that was very interesting. But so far right now, I think I'm supposed to be last thing I'm doing is retrieving the research camera. So that's where I am so far in the game, but still, it's going pretty well, and I'm enjoying it. Played some more Vampire Survivors just because I wanted to get the last few achievements so far, and it's crazy because one of the new items that you get when you fully evolve it, it truly is a game changer because it pretty much wipes out everything on the screen, and it just sucks in everything and destroys it. So I think that's probably one of the best weapons you can get for the game so far, at least from what I've played so far and tried out or at least most of the other new weapons. So I think it's good. I think I probably won't be touching again since I've gotten all the achievements unless there's another update or more DLC that comes out that has more achievements. I think for right now, though, I think I'm pretty much caught up and done with the game. But what I am not done with, though, is Stardew Valley. Version 1.6 came out recently, and it added quite a few new improvements to the game as far as now NPCs have different clothing, at least for winter. They have different clothing. There's new dialogue. There's more items. There are new quests in the game, and my friends and I, we've been playing that, and it's even though we've played it for quite a long while, just like seeing these new changes makes it almost feel like it's partially a new game experience just because of the stuff that you can do. So we're still enjoying that, and that's going well. One other game that I just tried out was Samurai Jack Battle Through Time. It definitely is very reminiscent of the show. In fact, it takes place based on how it starts at the end of season 5, but instead of ending the way it did in the show, it is sort of like splitting off into an alternate ending or alternate storyline. So it's very interesting so far. I like the aesthetics. It seems like they brought back pretty much all of the voice actors, which is also great. The combat is pretty nice. One thing that I am sort of struggling with is the parrying, just because it seems like you actually have to be very precise with your timing to get it to work. Like, I know I struggle with like initially parrying in, say, Sekiro, but that seems to be a whole lot easier than parrying in this game. But for the most part, though, it is cool. I also do like how, of course, this isn't anything new. Other games have done this, but I like how in the game, when Jack takes a certain amount of damage, his clothes do get torn, just like they do in the show. So it really does make it feel like you are playing an episode of the show itself, and so I am really enjoying that so far. And one last game that I don't have any gameplay footage of, but I tried a little bit of The Last Case of Benedict Fox, and sadly, I'm probably just going to have to play it some other time, or at least on PC, because performance on the Steam Deck was not great at all. When I first started it, I was thinking, ooh, this looks bad, but when I turned on my frame counter, then I saw it was actually about 35 frames per second. And this is a 2D, or I guess you could say 2.5D Metroidvania type of game. So I wouldn't think that it would have anything that's really demanding.
Right.
I mean, considering other games that I've been able to run on the Steam Deck and I'm hitting 60 frames per second. So I'm not sure what the problem was. I even tried fiddling around with the settings, nothing seemed to work, but it just didn't seem to do well, so I just stopped playing that. But one thing that I was a bit disappointed, though, was that there was no option to disable depth of field, because I really am not a fan of that. But I'll see maybe if I can do something in the configuration files, maybe I can disable it that way, but for right now, I just haven't played too much of that.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. Very. Yeah, I realized that the clips you sent me through Discord, I thought that those were the same ones that you sent me through email successfully, and so I didn't even have those up ready to go. But I'll just add them, to the final video version. So those two games will still be in there. Um, as for what I've been playing, so of course I did my 24-hour thing, and I'm going to try to get the streams downloaded later so that I can actually use clips from the stream, because that's where I did most of my gaming. But I'm not going to show clips of absolutely everything, because there's a couple things that I just played, so briefly that it's just not even worth bringing up. But the first thing, biggest of all, was that I started playing Horizon Forbidden West, and thankfully the PC version, on the desktop, runs really well. With mostly high settings, I was getting pretty much an average of 70 to 90 frames per second. That's pretty standard. I was able to do a little bit of optimization to improve things a bit, to where it was more consistent, because occasionally before that it would, like, sometimes in towns, drop down into the 40s. So I mean, and I know that, like, Horizon Zero Dawn has kind of some similar issues as well, just because it's very much because of the type of open world game it is, and just the sheer amount of detail that they put into everything. It definitely is a more demanding game, but it still runs really well. It was kind of funny though. I got to the last 10 minutes of my 24-hour stream, and I had got into a good stopping point in the game I was playing, so I decided, okay, I'm going to play Horizon for 10 minutes. And when I started it up, it was going like 20 frames per second, and it's like, okay, I think my computer's been on for too long. It's like, okay, well, I tried it for a little bit. It didn't really work. I mean, for anyone who looks back at the stream, or if I'm able to get, footage up, or like even just looking at the footage I have right here, currently, the frame rate is pretty consistent. Like it does vary a lot in terms of, being like sometimes a 20-30 frame difference, but it's still most of the time running above 60. So, and yes, that's 1080p, but that's like with the field of view maxed out and various other settings. I mean, it's a really good looking game for sure. But yeah, it's anyone who actually watched the stream would know that it was running pretty consistently, running really well the whole time. So I've been impressed with it. It's a very good port. But I did decide before I did my stream and quite a bit after, to also play it on the Steam Deck. And I will have some footage here of, me playing it on the Steam Deck, and it looks pretty decent. It's definitely not like as good looking as it is on the desktop, obviously, but the main thing is the frame rate is just not great. Like, a lot of the time it'll be in around 30 frames per second, and I basically just logged it to that because it wasn't really getting above that anyway. But frequently it'll drop into the 20s, especially when there's just a lot on the screen. And it's one of those things where it's kind of like a mixed bag in terms of how much I want to play it on the Steam Deck versus playing it on my desktop, because the Steam Deck has the factor of convenience. I can play it anytime, anywhere. I can, turn on the Steam Deck, play for 5 minutes, and then turn off the Steam Deck, and as soon as I turn it back on, I'm exactly where I left off. I don't have to, reboot the game or, reopen it, anything like that. I don't have to deal with any of that. But because the frame rate often, especially when there's a lot going on the screen, will drop into the 20s, it makes it hard to want to play it that way all the time. So it's kind of one of those things where it probably runs better on like other handheld PCs, like the Lenovo Legion Go and the Asus ROG Ally, not on the MSI Claw, because I've heard that thing is actually pretty terrible. But it's hard for me to like really recommend it on the Steam Deck. I would say if you have no other way to play the game, and you can live with the lower frame rate, like you're just used to console gaming and all of that, then in that case I would say probably it's fine. But it's not something where I would say if you aren't just like determined to play it on a handheld, I wouldn't recommend it. Like, because you can get significantly better performance on a decent desktop. You can get obviously PS5 it runs significantly better. Even if you're just doing performance mode, I'm sure that it pretty well or not performance. Even if you're doing fidelity mode, it probably maintains 30 frames per second. Steam Deck just isn't powerful enough for that. And the one thing that I hadn't thought about before the game came out is the fact that even though this game is on PS4, the port to PC is the PS5 version. It's not the PS4 version. Because, like Horizon Zero Dawn, you can run that on Steam Deck, medium to high settings, and it will, you can keep 30 frames per second really easily. But it's also based off of the PS4 game. Whereas this one, it's based off of the PS5 version, so you're running it on significantly weaker hardware than the PS5. And it still runs, and it actually has great load times, regardless of whether you're playing it on Steam Deck or on a desktop. At least with an SSD. I haven't tried it with a regular standard hard drive. But yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot I can say. But performance and visuals aside, I am enjoying the game. It's definitely not something where I would say that it's like, this is revolutionary, like this completely redefines open world games, because it doesn't. It's very paint by the numbers. Like there's a lot in terms of it being just very similar to other open world games from one standpoint. But the combat is really, really good. Of course, it's always satisfying shooting off parts on the robots. That's just always extremely satisfying. And really, it is the ranged combat alone and some of the stealth stuff that is more satisfying. Whereas I would say that the melee combat still, while it's better than it was in Zero Dawn, it's still not the best. But overall, just the game has made a lot of quality of life improvements over Zero Dawn. Biggest thing in my opinion is the fact that you actually have autosaves, which I'm almost positive, I could be wrong on the matter, but at least the way it felt to me when I was playing Zero Dawn is that it didn't actually have autosaves, that if you didn't, that you had to save at campfires, and that if you didn't save at the campfire, then you could potentially lose a bunch of progress, which was very annoying. So, now, maybe I'm wrong about that. I actually probably should just look into that, because I'm curious about whether or not that was just a mistaken understanding for me. But that's at least what it felt like whenever I was playing Zero Dawn back on the PS4. But there's that. That's definitely something. They added a glider similar to what you have in like Breath of the Wild. The one difference being that you have to hold down the button in order to bring out the glider. You only have to hold it down for like a second, but instead of it just being, a single button tap. And I can't remember, I feel like in, at least in Zelda, I'm pretty sure you had to hold down the button while gliding in order to keep it out. Whereas in this one, you don't have to hold it down. Maybe I'm remembering wrong. I might just be mixing up my controls with different things, but this one you don't have to hold it down. I will say that for sure. Trying to think if there's any other specific quality of life improvements I can think of. There probably are, but either way, the point is that I think it's a better game than Zero Dawn. It basically takes everything that was good about Zero Dawn, refines it to make it a significantly better game. And although Aloy definitely doesn't look as pretty as she did in the first game, like they definitely downgraded her model, she doesn't look as bad as I initially thought. At least not most of the time. Most of the time she looks just fine. It's just sometimes in the close-up cutscenes that it's like, yeah, they definitely downgraded her, made her look less attractive. And it's not really like a big deal, but at the same time, it's also just, why do you feel the need to make a pretty woman look less pretty? I don't understand that, but anyway. Yeah. I'm very much enjoying the game. I'm glad that I got it. I plan to stick with it, and we'll see how much I just play it on Steam Deck versus playing it on my desktop. It'll kind of just depend on the situation. One thing I do want to mention, though, one more thing with playing on the Steam Deck. I tried streaming it earlier today during a lunch break, and the streaming quality was not... It wasn't working very well, but I think part of the problem was my kids were also streaming something at the same time, so it's like, okay, I'm trying to stream this, demanding game that that uses like a lot of it's like it's demanding to run in the first place, and then you're also trying to stream it in situations where you need to have more precise reactions, and like it would be 60 frames per second most of the time, and then occasionally it would just stutter a little bit because I have too many things going on at once. So there was that. But yeah, that's about... I could definitely say plenty more, but once again, summary is I really enjoy the game so far. Otherwise, other games that I played, I spent a good amount of time playing some Death Stranding. The footage I have here, at least right now, unless I get the stuff from my stream, is just old footage. But I'm still really, really loving the game. One thing I will say, after playing a bunch of Horizon Forbidden West, is it actually really makes me appreciate the traversal in Death Stranding that much more. Which is kind of funny because it's like Horizon, you most of the traversal, it's just like it's exactly what you would expect, where you don't have to worry about tripping or balancing your load, or how much stuff you're carrying, things like that. And Death Stranding, you very much have to worry about that, and the environment, like where you walk and everything else, makes a dramatic difference in how you get around. But it just made me appreciate those mechanics in Death Stranding, because it's really something that makes it so much different from other games. You have to think about the way you get around, whereas Horizon and everything else, you don't have to think about that at all. You just do it. You go from place to place, you fight enemies, all that, and the focus is so much more on traversal in Death Stranding. But anyway, so I made some more progress on that before I took the break to play some games with my wife, and still loving it. But with my wife, and I don't have any footage for it at the moment, at least. We played some Diablo 4 again. Of course, I had it set up so that it displayed both my desktop and the Steam Deck at the same time, so you could see both screens. And yeah, it's fun. I enjoy playing it. We still haven't even gotten... I think we're maybe in Act 2, and there's like 4 acts or 5 acts maybe to the game. And the game came out close to a year ago. But it's one of those games where it's fun when we play it. We just don't play it super often. And we're not in any rush to get through it. We don't engage with the seasonal content. We're focused on getting through the main story, and really that's about it. So but it's good stuff, at least from that standpoint. Otherwise, also I played some more of Dangeresque, the Rumisode Triungulate, and finished that up, or at least finished the third episode, Rumisode, on while I was on stream. There's definitely a bunch more like achievements and stuff that I didn't discover when I was running through it, because it's a short game. So probably at some point I'll go through and just go grab some more. Maybe when I'm just in the mood to just chuckle a bit and not deal with any like combat or anything like that. So but it's just a very, very funny game. And I did get to play some games with both of my boys. My middle son, initially we tried to play some Lego games on PC, but unfortunately those ones, even though they have split screen co-op, they don't let you do more than one controller at a time, and they don't let you use a mouse. So you have to play exclusively with a keyboard for the controls, which is just super awkward for a 3D game. And it didn't work. So we tried that for a little bit, and then I was just like, this just isn't working. Having one person have to use the keyboard and then the other person gets to use a controller. So we ended up just switching over to play Kirby and the Forgotten Land on the Switch, and did the same with my oldest son as well after that. So that was fun. And then I also played some Persona 3 Reload, which is mostly like my late night game after everybody was asleep. And that was like my last 3-4 hours of streaming that I spent playing that. Once again, the footage here is just old footage, but I definitely was struggling to stay awake towards the end there. And like there was a couple times where I seriously considered doing a 15-minute break and just taking like a 15-minute power nap and then trying to wake up after that. But what I was afraid of if I did that is that I would sleep through the alarm for that power nap, and then I would end. Well, actually, it would be either I would have a hard time falling asleep because I'd be thinking about the fact that I'd have to get up in 15 minutes, or I'd fall asleep and crash and sleep completely through my alarm and through the rest of the stream. So I decided to not do anything like that, and I just did what I could, got some caffeine, and kept myself awake as best as I could, whether it was switching to a standing position or hopping on the exercise bike for a little bit, which I haven't been on in a while, so my legs were not used to that type of motion. I mostly just do walking the rest of the time, but yeah, so it was interesting from that standpoint, but it's still a game I really enjoy. I definitely have been, going back and forth between that and other games, and having a good time. It's a great game. But then let's see here. The last thing that I guess there's two more things. I'll just briefly mention. I did play BioShock Infinite on the Steam Deck so that I could record the footage for that, so that I can get that video up next week, since I opted not to do it for this past Monday, since I just didn't have the time. So got that recorded. We'll have that video up next week. And then very lastly, this one I really didn't play long at all, but I was just talking to some guys in the Married to the Games Discord earlier today, and something I didn't realize is that EA no longer has the Origin launcher. They just switched to a general EA launcher. And so like someone had mentioned that, is the Origin launcher gone? And I didn't think it was, but I decided I would install one of my EA games in Steam and then just launch it and see what happens. And it's just like a general EA launcher. But the game I decided to install was Mirror's Edge Catalyst. So I played very briefly. I'm very, very rusty on the controls, so I was definitely falling off of buildings more than I had planned on. Well, really, anytime I fall off a building is more than I plan on doing it. But it's still a great game. I just unfortunately was very, very rusty, and then on top of that, I think because I had started a new game at some point, I didn't have one of the main upgrades that I thought I was supposed to have. So, or at least the area where I was, it didn't seem like I could use it. I don't know. Doesn't matter. That one runs really well on Steam Deck. Very easy to get consistent 60 frames per second with, the only dropping to like 58. So, but it's runs well, looks great game. Thoroughly enjoy it. Not diving back into it though right now. So, Yeah. That is basically it for me. I'm sure that there's something else I played, but that was really pretty much all of it. It was mostly just Death Stranding, Horizon, and Persona that were my 3 games that I played the most during my stream.
Okay. Couple quick questions. I guess first question I have is, with the Lego game, I think you said you were playing Lego City Undercover.
Yeah, I mean, at first we tried Lego Harry Potter, and then we tried Lego City Undercover.
Did you try, or at least with one of them, one of the controllers playing it with it plugged in directly through USB?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, huh.
Yeah, I tried doing one with USB and then plugging in the other just with wireless so that it wouldn't have to stretch the cable over, and it just didn't work.
Huh, that's really weird, because I haven't had any problems with Lego games, because I've done that with Lego Marvel Superhero, Lego Star Wars, and Lego Batman, and those games were fine with 2 controllers, so
okay, well,
I'm not entirely sure what the problem could be.
I don't know then. It's very possible I was doing something wrong. It was my first time trying. I didn't test it out ahead of time, so I'll keep that in mind and mess with it probably before I do my next 24-hour stream, which isn't even until the fall, but I'll have to try that again, because like I would like to play the games with my boys, because I know they love those Lego games, but it just I couldn't control it with just a keyboard. That was not working. If I'd been able to use my mouse, I would have been fine, because I could have used it for camera control, but without that, it's just like, well, not even just camera control, just some of the general like actions, like that. Yeah, it was very difficult to do without having something that wasn't just the keyboard. It's like, it's fine for 2D games, but for a 3D game, it's a lot more difficult to move around that way. So, anyway. Did you have any other questions?
Oh, just one. Just do you know offhand if Horizon Forbidden West has any sort of Steam Deck rating, whether it's like playable or...
It's still unknown is what it's listed as, but I would say it's probably going to end up being listed as unsupported in the end, because unless Nixxes puts out some stuff to make it run better, I don't think most people are going to be okay with the fact that it drops into the 20s so much, because it really does. I mean, it really can quite a bit. Like, there will be rare occasions where it won't, but it's just too often it's like that. And I tried doing like FSR and stuff, and oh man, FSR makes it look so bad. Like, and that's what the FSR set to quality, and it just completely ruins the graphics. And it's like, I mean, it looked worse than a Switch game, like a Switch port, like one of the bad Switch ports. So yeah, it was just completely unacceptable. And I think what happened was, initially when I said that, oh, I think FSR fixed the problem, I don't think I actually had enabled it. Like, I thought I did, and maybe I didn't save the settings or something, and so I thought it was fine, but it's like, I tried putting on FSR on quality mode, and it just looked awful. Intel XeSS is just as bad, if not worse. Like, I wouldn't even try doing the FSR with performance mode, because it looked bad in quality, so... Yeah, I was not impressed with that. That really bugged me, because if I could get a consistent 30, I would be happy with that. Like, it's not ideal. I'd much rather be playing at 60 or above. It's significantly better, but if I can get a consistent 30, it is technically playable. I played Horizon Zero Dawn in 30. It was fine. But I will say, it does make me a little concerned about what might happen with Ghost of Tsushima and God of War Ragnarok. Ghost of Tsushima, I'm probably surprisingly a little less concerned, only because of the fact that that was a PS4 game. And even though they'll probably be porting the PS5 version, I think because it started as a PS4 game, it could theoretically be better. Ragnarok, I'm a little less worried about because that game's much less open. So it's a lot easier, I think, for them to. I think it should run better, just from that standpoint. But either way, I mean, obviously, the ideal way to play any of these games is always going to be on PC over trying to play it on the Steam Deck. If it plays well enough that I can handle it, sure. But like Ragnarok, I'm definitely not going to be doing any of the really hard, like the Berserker boss fights, because those things are insane. Yeah, like I struggled with that sometimes on PS4 at 30. Of course, then there were the rare occasions when the PS4 would just like I'd start up the game and it'd be running at like 20 for a few seconds, and usually it was just like PS4 was too warm. I probably just need to clean out the dust too, but occasionally it would do that, and then most of the time it was just 30 across the board, no problem. But anyway, that is enough about all of that stuff. Do you have any other questions, any other thoughts before we start talking news?
No, sir.
All right, so I do actually need to link one of these articles for starters, but the first topic on our docket is that Xbox. I should back up. Phil Spencer did an interview with Polygon, and as much as I loathe Polygon and have no desire to click on their articles, since that is the one place where we have the full quotes. One of the things that Phil discussed with Polygon was about potentially bringing other video game retailer stores like Epic Games and Steam to the Xbox. So let me read some of the specific stuff he said here. So, I'll just read some of what the article itself says. So, Spencer mentioned his frustrations with closed ecosystems, so he asked for clarity. Could he really see a future where stores like itch.io and Epic Games Store existed on Xbox? Was it just a matter of figuring out mountains of paperwork to get there? And Spencer said, yes. Consider our history as the Windows company. Nobody would blink twice if I said, hey, when you're using a PC, you get to decide the type of experience you have by picking where to buy games. There's real value in that. Spencer believes console players would benefit from that freedom too, and so would console makers like Microsoft. Spencer explained how in the past, console makers would typically subsidize the cost of expensive hardware, knowing that a portion of every dollar spent on games for the platform over the years would eventually make it back to the console maker. Then in time, the console maker would recoup the subsidy and hopefully more. But Spencer said, Moore's law has slowed down. The price of the components for a console aren't coming down as fast as they have in previous generations. Thank you, inflation. Worse, he explained, the console market isn't growing, with more gamers moving to PC and handheld options. Now, the notion of subsidizing a console and forcing players to purchase games through the official storefront to help recoup costs might not make sense. The walls meant to lock people into consoles might be motivating them to stay out. Subsidizing hardware, he says, becomes more challenging in today's world. And I will say, and this may seem too altruistic, I don't know that it's growing the industry. So I think, what are the barriers? What are the things that create friction in today's world for creators and players? And how can we be a part of opening up that model? So, of course, it goes on, talking about the fact that part of this is that they are they're selling their games on other platforms. Of course, that's one of the things that they're doing. Obviously they started doing it on PC years ago, and now they're bringing over games like Sea of Thieves and Grounded and Pentiment and Hi-Fi Rush to PlayStation and or Switch. But the main thing is, let me just find some more. Just kind of scanning through, finding specifics on this, so I'm not just reading the whole article. Spencer said, if I want to play on a gaming PC, then I feel like I'm more a continuous part of a gaming ecosystem as a whole, as opposed to on console, my gaming is kind of sharded, to use a gaming term. I've never heard that term, and it's not spelled with a T, thankfully. Um, but based on these different closed ecosystems that I have to play across, and so it's not necessarily like 100% him saying, "Oh yes, we'll definitely bring over these other stores," but at least some of the stuff he's saying, indicates that could be a potential future. So, what are your thoughts on this?
It's definitely, I mean, just him making this statement, it really, I guess, emphasizes how things are really changing in the gaming scene. How we had, or especially with consoles, I should specify, where you had a box that where you of course had games that were other platforms. We had games that were specifically for this platform and no other platform. To now we're putting these games on PC. To now we're having these games possibly even be going over to our rival our rival platforms, other console platforms. To now we're gonna see if we can get other people onto our box, which I think is very ambitious, and it's very interesting to see. Like I mean, I don't completely know like how some stuff would work. For example, with or just the fact that like I don't know. I just really just don't know how things would work, because if you have say Epic Games, like some games are already on Xbox, so I don't know how that would work. Like, I mean, maybe it would be something similar to, I guess maybe because these stores are being hosted on Xbox, maybe Xbox gets a revenue cut from the games that are sold, but considering the fact that, the stores already, take a 30% cut of the games that are sold on the stores themselves, I don't know how that would work. Also, I know with certain games, like say, for example, you have games that aren't necessarily sold on Xbox, but are sold on Epic Games, like say, Final Fantasy VII. That's a game that's on Epic Games Store, but it's not on Xbox. So, like, how would that work?
Right.
Especially considering the fact that it wasn't made for Xbox design at all. I don't know how that would work. And also with something like itch.io, which I think would which would be great for exposure for like indie devs who make games on there. They can get that exposure. More people can get into indie games because a lot of people think that, well, a lot of people have they don't really care too much about indie games, so like that could be a way for them to dip their toes into indie games, especially considering the fact that some people have already experimented with indie games through Game Pass and have started to enjoy those games. This would be a good way for people to find other games. But I do know that itch.io, the way that store works, it's very flexible, because a lot of pricing it is actually up to, well, I mean, of course it is with other stores as well, but it's really up to the developers as far as how they set things up, because they either can have a flat rate for the games, or they could have, pay as you want, like pay as much as you want for the game, or just have, say, like, here's like the base price, but if you want to pay more for that, you can or not. So it's very, I just don't know how they would be able to set that up on Xbox as a console, which is just really odd. I mean, I'll give him credit. This, like, I think this is a good idea, but as far as how to get it properly executed, it's going to be a whole different ballgame altogether. But if there is something that can be done, then I'm for it. Because that's actually going to, at the end of the day, give gamers more choices. I mean, for one thing, for example, if Microsoft can get these stores on Xbox, that means that for whatever reason, a Xbox player could say, "Hey, I want to get a game, but Xbox doesn't have it on sale. Is it available on sale at this store, or can I get cheaper at this store than on the Xbox store?" So that would be giving them more choices, more variety. Now, granted, of course, they may not necessarily want to, especially if you're concerned about, say, achievements, that would split up where you have everything allocated. But maybe Microsoft could do something there. I don't know. And also, if they buy the games, would it be something that is directly tied to that store, or if it's something that if you bought, like say, it would essentially be serving as a game key. Like for example, you buy a game on, say, Fanatical, you buy the key there, but it does unlock on Steam. So I don't know if it's something like if you bought the game on Epic Games, does it unlock on your Xbox Microsoft Store platform? So that it's just like a lot of questions there, but I like the idea.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think my biggest thing is that I look at it as basically they'd be turning Xbox into PC. Except maybe with a little bit less in terms of options, because it's still not running on Windows or something similar. I think that they could, if they were willing to. It seems like what they would have to do in order to make it run, to make it less PC and more still maintain that Xbox feel, that they would have to make it so that those stores are accessible in a similar way to how you can already access the Xbox store. But that also brings up the potential idea, like you were saying, where you could end up with PlayStation games on Xbox, because they're purchasable through Epic, they're purchasable through Steam. You got GOG, things like that. And I think that would be really funny, especially because that would mean that actually Xbox would be getting more PlayStation games than PlayStation is getting of their games. I think that would be very, very funny. I don't expect that to happen necessarily. And I'm sure that there will probably be some limits in what they can do. But when I say, I guess I should clarify, when I say that that it would make it more like PC, it would be in the sense that you'd still have to check and see, is this going to run on Xbox? And perhaps rather than looking at like the typical specs, those storefronts could start saying, this will run on your Xbox, and so on and so forth. It could potentially be a situation where, similar to what you were talking about, and maybe this is really what you were basically saying anyway, is that those, when they purchase a key through Epic or whatever else, it basically just unlocks that game unlocks the Xbox version of that game. In which case, then they wouldn't even have an issue with running the game. So, of course, then we get back to, like you were talking about, with Final Fantasy VII Remake or Rebirth, where, well, I guess Rebirth isn't on those yet, but you're being able to run those games run on the Xbox without having to mess around with settings. But if it's a PC version, you might be able to mess with the settings, and it's just like it's complex. It's not straightforward, but I could see this being something that happens in the future. Not like an immediate thing, not anytime soon, but in time, I definitely could see it being a reality. And it would be a way that Microsoft could truly compete with the PlayStation in a further manner, and even to some degree with PC. Microsoft really kind of wins out with PC in general anyway, because of the fact that most people are using Windows. The vast majority of people. Basically the only real exception to that is the rare person who's going to be using like Linux or whatever else they decide to use, or the person who's just playing on like Steam Deck and just using SteamOS and not touching Windows. But that's a very small minority of people. Like, I don't know what the actual market share is on Windows versus Linux, but I would guess it's probably like 95% is Windows, would be my guess.
It's
at least for main PCs that are not specifically like 100% Linux based, because of where they were purchased from or whatever.
I just say that like recently I actually did see uh a video, or like there were actually numbers. I can't remember the exact numbers. I know that Microsoft was, I think, something like 85%
Okay.
of overall market share, and then like what that would be like 11% was Apple, and then Linux jumped up to 4%.
But with just PC is more what I mean, because obviously
Oh yeah, just like,
Apple's a whole different story, because Macs,
oh yeah, yeah,
and because of course the the Apple operating system is, you can't technically legally put it on a PC, even though obviously a PC could run it. So, but yeah, this is just something interesting. We'll keep an eye on this and see what, if anything, comes out of it. But yeah. But speaking of Xbox, we do have another story that came up. So we've talked previously about the idea of this Xbox handheld, and what it is that it could potentially be. And of course, I was basically of the opinion that on the one hand, I think it is possible because Microsoft sees the success of the Switch and everything else, but on the other hand, I also thought it could. I mean, depending on the source, it could just be like a pipe dream from someone. But then, of course, we got some other leaks that basically indicated that yeah, this was probably a real thing. At least this is something that they have prototyped. But of course, as Polygon, in their interview with Phil Spencer, they also talked to him about handhelds and about the possibility of an Xbox handheld. And I'm not going to read through this whole article, but the short version is that uh, Phil Spencer is a big fan of these handheld PCs in particular. Of course, he's mentioned in the past that he's a fan of the Switch as well. But the main thing that he said when it comes to this, that's the biggest challenge, is making sure that they have something that, number one, is going to feel like it's an Xbox branded thing and not just a general branding kind of thing. Because you have the Asus ROG Ally, you have the Lenovo Legion Go, you have the Steam Deck. They feel like PC handhelds. They even though they're all a little bit different from each other, they still don't feel like they fit with PlayStation or Xbox. They don't. I don't know how to explain it exactly. I'm not very good at explaining it. But the point is that Phil Spencer wants. This is a quote he said: "I want my Lenovo Legion Go to feel like an Xbox." He said, "I brought the Legion Go with me to Game Developers Conference. I'm on the airplane and I have this list of everything that makes it not feel like an Xbox. Forget about the brand. More like, are all of my games there? Do all of my games show up with the save files that I want? I want to be able to boot into the Xbox app in a full screen, but in a compact mode. And all of my social experiences there. I want to feel the dashboard of my Xbox when I turn on the television, except I want it on that handheld device." So, yeah, I mean, he didn't like outright say, "Oh, this is something we are doing," but he does seem to indicate that it's something they're at least looking into, and that's something that they want to do, but they want to make sure that it really feels like it is part of the Xbox ecosystem, like it actually feels like it's genuinely Xbox. So, your thoughts?
Well, initially after reading the article, I had some thoughts, but something not just now as you were talking, I thought of something else. And I guess at the end of the day, what it really would boil down to is, what does Phil really mean when he says he wants an Xbox experience? Because I feel like if he wants just a pure Xbox experience, I feel like that it could be possible. Where if you just say put whatever modified Windows version that's used for Xbox onto like an Xbox handheld, that could work. That should be fine. But if he is talking about something that is sort of like what the Lenovo Legion and the Ally already are doing, then that's going to be a completely different ballpark altogether, because that really is because those are handhelds are really just Windows PC. That's what those are.
Right.
That's what it is. But and then I also thought about what if it is down that path. What he could do is say, try to make something a similar version of the big picture mode that is used in Steam, especially with the Steam Deck. If Microsoft is able to make their own version of big picture mode for Xbox PC and put that on a handheld, that would probably alleviate so many problems that could be faced. Just because you start up your handheld, you go directly into the Xbox app, and all your games are there. You don't have to worry about having to go into. Now, granted, I've never played an Ally. I've never used the Lenovo Legion Go, so I don't know how those function as far as when you turn them on, what you're supposed to do. I don't know if it goes directly into Windows and you just have to like go into whatever games you want, or go into whatever stores you want, like Steam or my Xbox Store or GOG or whatever. But if it is centered just around Xbox, I think you should be able to program it in such a way where you should be able to just turn your handheld on, and then it goes directly into the Xbox store. So that way, you can treat it the same way, where you can just go into your library, go into all your games, see what games you have downloaded, installed. If Microsoft can do that, then they don't have to necessarily do that for other they don't have to necessarily give that option to the other manufacturers like Lenovo and Asus. But if they want to make their own branded gaming PC, handheld PC that is focused primarily on Xbox, they could, theoretically just do that then, and that should be able to, especially for people who don't want to get a Steam Deck because they because they want to make sure that there's Windows in there, so that way they have more compatibility with games. They could just do that. Granted, the one problem for that is the fact that because it is centered solely on Xbox, I know that the Xbox game store and PC is most likely going to have fewer games than on, say, Steam. So that would be a problem, especially for people who are, concerned about getting all their games, especially if they want it in one place. And also, some people who game on PC probably don't even use the Xbox game store. I know I don't. But that's just something I think that could help, or maybe even, granted, if and going back to the previous topic, if Phil Spencer is able to sort of innovate that idea of bringing the other stores onto Xbox, if there's like, say, some sort of app that could go, or I guess you could say some sub app that goes into the store where, hey, here are all these games, like it goes directly into the Xbox big picture mode, but then there's also one app you can have on there that does link to Steam, so that way you could go through the app in the Xbox app and then be able to play your Steam game. So if he's able to do something like that, it could help, but I think the biggest thing here for handheld is to figure out which market is Microsoft truly trying to capture. Because if it is for the Xbox console market, I think that's pretty much simple. You can just like slap the Xbox OS directly onto a handheld, call it a day. But if you're focused on the PC market, you're going to have a bit more trouble there.
Right. Well, I don't think that he's wanting to go into the PC market from that standpoint. It sounds like basically he's talking about basically just making an Xbox Switch. Wanting to. I mean, he's messing with the Lenovo Legion Go and stuff like that, because obviously these are, those are the things that are more powerful that can play a lot of these same games. But I think from what he's saying, it sounds like what he's wanting to do, what he would want to do is basically just make an Xbox handheld that is purely Xbox, that's not PC at all, that, is going to launch with the normal Xbox dashboard that people have grown, are used to and love, that it's going to have, like the quick resume and things like that is already present on the Series X and Series S, that it's going to look like it belongs with the Xbox ecosystem, both in terms of software and hardware. And at least from everything he's saying, I think all of that sounds really good. Like, I think that that's something that would be a very smart move to make. I've heard some people suggest the idea that basically the next gen of Xbox could very well have the handheld replace the Series S in terms of that, because people have kind of crunched the numbers, and theoretically it should be possible to make a handheld that's equal to the Series S. And of course that would mean that their games wouldn't get pushed forward as much in terms of visuals and performance and all that. But I think in general, Xbox has less of an issue with having games perform well by default than like PlayStation does, because and that's not necessarily 100% accurate, but they have more variety in terms of their types of games, so it's easier for them to have games that can run at 60 frames per second versus PlayStation, where they have so many games that are just hyper-realistic movie looking games, the super cinematic games, that they have a harder time getting that 60 frames per second, or at least getting it consistent. Let alone the 120 that they promised at the beginning of the gen. That has hardly ever happened. I know that there's definitely more games on Xbox that do that, in part because of backwards compatibility, but also just in general. But either way, I think that this is a good thought. I mean, obviously there's nothing officially announced. It's just something that, it's a topic that's come up. They asked Phil about it, and he said, if we were going to do this, it needs to feel like it's Xbox, and it can't just be something else. Because currently what we have on the market, none of it feels like it's Xbox. It has elements of Xbox, but it's not like... I could never pick up my Steam Deck and say, this feels like my Xbox controllers. Because it doesn't. Apart from having ABXY in the particular positions, it doesn't feel like an Xbox controller at all. So, yeah. Any other thoughts on that?
No, sir.
All right, so we have gotten some NPD results so far. Just going through February, and I'm not going to get into all the specific numbers and so on and so forth, but there is a surprising game that has actually is currently the best-selling game of 2024. And granted, this is only covering January and February. It's not considering March at all. The year still has a long way to go, but the game that is the best-selling so far for this year is Helldivers 2. And not only is it the best-selling, but can you guess where it's the best-selling? It's on PC. Nearly 60% of the sales of Helldivers 2 have been on PC, both in the US and the UK. And the UK is a pretty big deal because that's heavy PlayStation territory. But it has sold more copies on PC than it has on PlayStation. And, I have plenty of thoughts on this, but I want to hear what you have to say first.
Well, how about those PC gamers who don't buy their games and just pirate, huh?
Right.
Yep. So, I think this definitely speaks to the fact, which we've talked about many times, especially last week, or at least the last time we talked about Helldivers. But this should definitely cement in Sony's head that putting games on PC day and date is a good idea. And they definitely should be taking notes at these numbers and say, this is a good idea. Let's keep doing this, guys. So whatever timetables they might be having as far as when they want to bring games over to PC, they possibly could be shortening them now just because they're seeing like there's a lot of money to be made here, guys. Like we thought we were striking it rich before. There's so much more we can get out of this. So I think, it's definitely surprising. And it's like, who would have thought that a game that was initially made for PlayStation 4, but then was made for PS5, who would have thought that a game that is a Sony, or at least console exclusive, is not even selling the most copies? Like, that's insane. But yeah, people are enjoying the game. There were initial problems with the servers at launch, but those seem to have been mostly fixed. And so people are enjoying the game, and so hey, glad it's doing well. But Sony fanboys ain't gonna be so happy about that though.
Right. Well, the excuse I've been hearing is that basically the only reason why it's selling so well is because since it's an online only game, it's not as easy to pirate. And I mean, but of course, then you have Horizon Forbidden West, which literally took 30 seconds for pirates to remove the DRM, which is kind of funny. I mean, literally 30 seconds. But it's in like the top 3 of the Steam sales charts. At least it was as of last time I heard. I'm actually curious about that. See how things are looking right now. Just bring that up real quick. If I can remember how to. Oh, here we go. Top sellers. So currently, okay, well, it's not in the top 3 anymore. It was in the. Oh, okay, because this is included in the Steam Deck. Well, the Steam Deck should not be in there. Let's try to sort it by. We don't. I would like to leave the Steam Deck out of that. So let's see. Where is it now? Okay, so now Horizon Forbidden West. It's dropped quite a bit in the list, but okay, but actually some of these are free to play, so we can't really count the free to play games. There's got to be a way to leave those out. Oh, here we go. Hide. There has to be a way that we can just remove anything that is free to play, because anything like that doesn't really count. Okay, so no, we don't want to. We want to leave out the free to play. Okay, so anyway, looking at the list here, and I'll just go ahead and share my screen on this. I don't want that. Leave me alone. Okay, fine. We'll just say 720p. Switch the focus on that. So we got Helldivers 2, which is at the very top. The Steam Deck, we can literally just we'll put that ignore for that. In fact, okay, we'll just ignore anything that is free to play. So I don't. Yeah, Counter-Strike is free to play. So ignore the free to play games because those don't really count for anything. Destiny 2, even though you can purchase that, it's probably only in the top because of the free-to-play stuff. So, okay, so if we look at the games, if we exclude the free-to-play stuff and exclude the Steam Deck, it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's in the top 10. And a couple days ago, it was in the top 3. And that is with it having been cracked. So piracy is really not. I mean, it's like, yes, of course, there will always be pirates on PC. Of course. But they don't make that dramatic of a difference in the sales because they're a very small minority of the PC gaming crowd. I mean, these games still sell really well. I mean, Helldivers is still at the very top of the sales. And that is, with the game having come out over a month ago, I think. I can't remember when it released exactly. There was sometime in February. and it's 60% of its sales were on PC, and that was just for the month of February, so not even a full month. So, I mean, Sony needs to look at this and say, this is obviously the thing we need to do in the future. They're clearly not concerned about the pirates, because if they were, they wouldn't keep putting their games on PC. Because they know that they're going to make money. They know that people are going to buy these games. And, if they sell them day one, they're going to make a whole lot more money. Guaranteed. And they could very well end up selling more copies of many games if they sell them on PC. Now, I'm sure that there will be some situations where the console people will end up buying the games day one more often. But this was not one of them. So, now, I would not expect that Horizon Forbidden West has sold better on PC, in its first week or month or whatever, than it did on PS5. That's just highly unlikely. And of course, it was also, it was released on PS5 and PS4, so I'm sure that probably it sold better there. But of course, that also came out at the same time as Elden Ring, which was like it's like first it came out right before Zelda for Horizon Zero Dawn, and then Horizon Forbidden West came out the same time as Elden Ring, and it's like you just released it at the worst possible times. Now this one came out right around the time of Dragon's Dogma, and we're not going to get into all the stuff with Dragon's Dogma. I just figure there's not much point. It's just kind of rehashing stuff we talked about before the game came out. But these games will sell well if they're released day and date on PC. And in some cases, they may sell better on PC. And I want to see the day that happens. Mostly I just want to see the day that we get day and date. Now, hopefully when they do it, it's actually a game I want to play and not something that I have zero interest in. Because I'm not going to buy a game if I'm not interested in it. That's just plain and simple. Unless it's like, impulse buy territory where it's under $5. I'd be like, sure, I'll pay $5 for that. I can live with that. But more than 10, not generally. Unless it's just something that I'm looking at and I'm like, that could be fun. But if it's like Last of Us Part 2, I mean, of course, obviously that one's already been out on PlayStation for a while, but I'm not buying that at all. So, yeah, it's just, I am glad to see that Helldivers 2 has done so well. I really would like to play that one, but I'm just waiting because I just don't have time for it. And I've actually been thinking about getting Helldivers 1 on Vita. I was very seriously considering it earlier today. Because I thought, oh, well, I think I might have enough credit left on PSN to where I could buy it. And I only have like $17 in credit. And so, I think it's $40. Like, I don't really want to spend that much on it, I mean, yeah, I would only spend like $23 out of pocket, but that's still a bit more than I want to spend. So I'll just wait for now, and grab it like when I have a little bit of extra cash flow. But I'm kind of curious about that one. I mean, I know it's top down rather than the third person shooter kind of thing. It doesn't necessarily look as fun, but even then it's just kind of like, okay, this is a cool artifact, looking at these older games and trying them out before, of course, eventually grabbing Helldivers 2, which I would probably grab Helldivers 2 first anyway, because I'm way more interested in it, and I just don't have the time to play it, so, yeah. Alright, any other thoughts on that topic?
No, sir.
Alright. You want to go ahead and cover this Shinji Mikami topic here?
Certainly. Let me just quickly pull this up on my screen. Alright, so Shinji Mikami, he has, of course, he started up Tango Gameworks, and that was acquired by Bethesda, which of course was acquired by Microsoft. But it seems like he now has a new studio, and also that he left Tango Gameworks as well. So, in a new blurb for the remaster game Shadows of the Damned Hella Remastered website, there's a blurb that has his image and also profile, which says, as director and producer of the Resident Evil and the Evil Within series and more, Mikami has created numerous blockbuster hit titles. 1996 saw the release of Resident Evil, on which he acted as director. He greatly contributed to the popularization of the survival horror genre and has had a major impact on the video game industry ever since. In 2010, Mikami founded Tango KK, renamed Tango Gameworks in October of the same year, after becoming part of the ZeniMax Inc. After which he directed and released The Evil Within. He also acted as executive producer on Ghostwire Tokyo and Hi-Fi Rush. After leaving Tango Gameworks, he established Kamui Inc. So, and also in the Japanese version, it's gosh, I forgot what that kanji is, but simply Kaisha Kamui, which is pretty much just like Kamui Company Corporation. So he hasn't. The article also says Mikami himself has not officially announced the company's establishment, so its inclusion on the website might have been an error on Shadows of the Damned Hell Remastered developer Grasshopper Manufacturer's part. So that is definitely just a note. Before I start, do you want to share your thoughts?
The one thing I will say is that like I haven't played these games. Ghostwire Tokyo, I've been very interested in checking out, mostly because it has very much BioShock vibes. But it's just one that I haven't grabbed. Of course, like they've had it free on I think Amazon through Amazon Prime, but it was the Epic Games version. I was like, no, not doing that. No, I'll wait. But I do want to check that one out eventually. In general, it's like, okay, good for him. I'm glad he's able to do that. Start up a studio to do more of his stuff. I'm sure it's just going to be more like creepy horror stuff because that seems to be his thing in general. But yeah, that's really about all I have to say about that.
Okay. I'm interested, but on one hand, I'm just wondering, what's gonna happen next? Because I mean, he left Capcom to start his own company, which of course did well, and he made some good titles from there with Tango Gameworks, and then of course it was purchased by ZeniMax, and of course through Bethesda, it was bought by Microsoft, which I don't think I've heard any reason as to why he left Tango Works. I don't know if it's because of the fact that Microsoft owned the company, or if it's just that he wanted to retire. I've heard conflicts through different comments and stuff like that. So I'm very interested in seeing if he's going to try to keep Kamui, and of course, as it was saying in the article, this isn't official, but I'm wondering if he's going to try to keep it as independent as possible just so it doesn't get acquired again, because I don't know if that's something that he really wanted to fight against, I guess, with Tango Gameworks before it was acquired. I don't know if he thought, well, as long as it's a smaller company, it's fine. I don't know if it's just because it was bought by a larger company, if that was sort of like a problem he had with as to why he left. But if that is something that he didn't want to do, hopefully he is able to maintain that smaller ownership over, or at least smaller as far as like the company itself is small, not not saying like his shareholding is like smaller or anything like that, but hopefully he's able to keep that independent. And I definitely wish him all the best. And it is something that we are seeing with quite a few game developers. We talked about this before with oh gosh, now I'm drawing a blank with his name, but the one game developer who left Capcom and did Okami, who did Bayonetta, that developer,
Hideki Kamiya.
Yeah, him. He's going to be working on his once he's able to do that again. And in fact, also, I think a couple of the original developers at Rocksteady, they actually went and started up their own company,
Right.
or at least they're working on that right now, which is funny considering the fact that they also, worked on starting up Rocksteady in the first place. So it is interesting seeing all of these older developers, trying to make their own companies, I guess, again, just because they sort of got too large, which maybe could be a problem, but hey, they did great work, and, I definitely want to see them continue doing great work in the future.
Cool. All right. Well, going into our remaining topics. First of all, I have to ask about this Sonic Heroes remake that brought up. Did you play the original Sonic Heroes at all?
Yes.
Okay. So then you are the perfect person to talk about it, because I did not.
All right. So, VGC, Video Games Chronicle, posted a article which was relating to Midori, who, of course, has leaked other rumors and news about Atlas. And initially, there actually was a correction here. So, initially, Midori was quoted as saying that Sonic Heroes was actually confirmed for development, but then Midori stepped back and said that Sonic Team, or at least Sega, is actually saying that the remake is really just being considered rather than it actually being officially, in development. And also added, I do not know about this remake title being released in next 3 years, and I don't have any information on that. But originally, the original statement was just saying that the game was going to be made in development for the Switch 2. But of course, now it's just saying that it is in consideration. So, yeah. I guess, want me to go ahead and just say some stuff? Or...
Yeah, go ahead, since you played the game.
All right, so I actually am looking forward to this. Is actually one Sonic remaster that I would like to see. The original game, I do understand that some people will like it, some people will not like it. I was in the camp of I enjoyed it. It definitely was a fun game to play, and it was my first actual. Actually no, I won't say that just because of the fact that playing the Sonic Mega Collection did have the older games. So I was gonna say it is my first console Sonic game, but okay, I'll just say that's my first, the newest title that I had played. So I enjoyed it. It was fun. It definitely looked great. I would like to see this remade because unfortunately it wasn't a game that was ported like, say, the original Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2. Those games were never ported. I mean, we even got Sonic Colors ported. We got Sonic Generations ported, but this is a game that I really would have liked to have seen ported. But if they are going to go ahead and remaster it, I think that's just as fine, if not even better. Especially, maybe if they can tweak the controls a bit, that would be great. I think that overall the game was definitely fun. I wouldn't say it was necessarily spectacular, but it was enjoyable. The one, I guess, the biggest problems I might have had with the game just might have been, but granted, this probably again would relate back to the controls. It's just that getting those Chaos Emeralds was a major pain. Definitely spent a lot of time, and I was really actually very furious when my GameCube memory card was wiped and the game was not there anymore, so I had to do all that progress all over again. But I definitely like to see this. I don't know if I would enjoy it as much now as I did when I was younger, but I think that I could still go back and play the game, and it would be a great path down memory lane. So yeah, I'm definitely for this if it is actually being considered.
Yeah, I actually need to look up gameplay, because I think I've heard of the game, but I don't think I've ever seen gameplay of it unless it was just in someone's YouTube video where they had it in the background or something. So like I have no idea if this would be a game I'd be interested in at all. I will say, like, when it comes to Sonic games, I don't think I've ever actually... Well, I've never completed a Sonic game. I played, like, Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 back on the Sega Genesis. And I've dabbled in a couple of other Sonic games here and there. Like the... what was it? Lost World on 3DS and Wii U. Well, actually, I don't think I played the Wii U version at all. I think I only tried it on 3DS. But I never got it. I think the only Sonic game that I've ever like put a lot of time into was All-Stars Racing Transformed, which I played a bunch on the Wii U, back in the early Wii U days when there weren't a whole lot of games on there. I actually really enjoyed it, and then ended up eventually getting it for PC, where, of course, it looks and runs way better. I've never tried that one on Steam Deck, though, which I probably should, because I'm sure that would be a 90 frames kind of game. But I really liked that one. That one's really fun. Really, really good. And I love all the different, like, modes and the kind of stuff I wish they would do with Mario Kart to make it more interesting, because Mario Kart just... I mean, it's fun, but I wish that they had the single-player stuff in Mario Kart. And maybe, whenever they do the next one, they'll actually do that. But anyway, that's going way off topic. Point being, I'm all for this. In terms of, if they're remaking a Sonic game. But there's so many of them that I've just never played. And... like, I think eventually I want to grab Colors. I definitely want to get the open world one that they made. What's it called?
Frontier?
Yeah, Sonic Frontiers. But I've been waiting for, like, it to drop under $20, because I don't really want to spend that much on a game that I don't know how soon I'll actually play. But yeah. And, I mean, like, I've seen gameplay of some of the other ones, like, I don't know, some of the ones from, like, GameCube era that looked like they would probably be my kind of game, but I've just never played them. Like, I remember when they did the first, like, real 3D Sonic game on the Dreamcast, and I really wanted to play that, but of course I just really wanted a Dreamcast. And then I, never was able to get one, and then of course it completely failed, and I have a Dreamcast now, but I have no games for it. Like, literally, I just have... I think it came with maybe... from one of the Tomb Raider games, and it might not even be like a real copy, it might be a burned copy. I can't remember, because that's what I used some years ago. It's like, my Dreamcast is in great condition, but I've never really played it. Anyway. Still, we'll see what happens with this. Of course, the fact that Midori has backed off a bit from the initial stuff is interesting. Probably just because... so far, Midori has been accurate on every single thing that he or she has put up. I guess it would probably be a she, but who knows nowadays? Considering how often people will use avatars that don't actually match who they are. But regardless, and Midori actually has said that they're not going to be leaking stuff anymore. They decided to completely stop doing that, but they've been 100% accurate so far. Anyway, that I think is it. Let me look. I know that I had one other thing on the list. I just don't remember if it was anything worth actually talking about. Yeah, I mean, there's the thing about potentially GameCube games coming to Nintendo Switch Online, but I think that how people are coming to that conclusion is kind of stretching stuff, so I think we're just going to leave this topic alone until we get something more definitive. I will say, I think it'd be great if GameCube games came to Switch Online, make the service more valuable, but I'm not holding my breath on the matter. And I'm sure that probably even if Nintendo did bring it to Nintendo Switch Online, they would just make it another more expensive tier so that you could play these GameCube games, because they already did that with N64 and Sega Genesis. And granted, I'm a huge Nintendo 64 fan, and to a lesser extent, Sega Genesis. So there's that. But anyway, that's all I got for tonight. Anything else?
No, sir.
All right. Well, recommendations and dissuasions.
All right, so my recommendation is going to be completely out of left field, but it's just because of something that I sort of stumbled across or re-stumbled across this past week, and that is if you are just a fan of, say, animals, stuff like that. There was a great show back in the 2000s called, and this was on Animal Planet, it was called The Most Extreme, and pretty much it was a top 10 list of any type of, topic for animals, whether that be the deadliest snakes, the most powerful animals, and they just ran through a list, and it was very early 2000s. Like, if you look at the CGI that was used and also the music that sort of like sounded like it was inspired by something like the X-Files, it was very early 2000s, but I loved that as a kid. And I saw that people actually have playlists of the series on YouTube, so I've been watching that this past week. And so if you're someone who just likes animal facts or something like that, I just highly recommend looking up The Most Extreme on YouTube. Go through those playlists. It's enjoyable. I really liked watching that.
Very cool. Well, my recommendation is going to be Horizon Forbidden West for PC. I think that it is a fantastic game from what I've played so far. I thought initially that I was going to get really annoyed at how much Aloy talks to herself, but as I played, I realized, it's exactly the same as it was in Zero Dawn. It's like most of the time I don't even notice it. So, but yeah, I've been really enjoying it. It basically improves just about everything about Zero Dawn, with the exception of making Aloy look worse. But otherwise, it's a really solid game. I've been enjoying myself a lot on that. So that's my recommendation. Your dissuasion, sir.
All right, so if you happen to be in the East Coast, mainly I guess the mid to somewhat northern East Coast, and if you happen to go to a restaurant called Potbelly Subs and Sandwiches, do not buy their macaroni and cheese. I actually tried some of that today just because I thought I've normally had their subs and I thought they were pretty good. I'll try something different. I tried the mac and cheese. That was very below average macaroni and cheese. That definitely was not enjoyable at all. I mean, it was edible, but I wouldn't say that was a satisfactory meal. Just I've had better mac and cheese. Like, you definitely could have done way better just getting something out of a box, and done much better there. So that's my dissuasion. If you go to Potbelly Sandwiches, do not eat their mac and cheese.
Now, out of curiosity, because different people have different tastes on the matter, what to you, how would you describe your ideal mac and cheese?
Okay, so I would describe mine as something that is definitely flavorful, as far as you can taste the cheese, you can, something that does have some creamy texture to it. And I will say that it definitely was creamy. The noodles were actually, I think, a little bit overcooked in that aspect, so I definitely wasn't a fan of that part as well, but it just really lacked really much of a flavor. That was really, I think, the biggest problem I had with it, was just the flavor wasn't there at all.
You do live on the East Coast, where a lot of restaurants they don't season their food because, well, at least the very white ones do not season their food because they think that you should just add salt and pepper yourself.
Well, I think if you go down south enough, that's when it's good. Like, especially if you're from the if you're from the Chesapeake area, I mean, granted, that means you're just gonna be seasoning your food with Old Bay. just get that
Well,
on.
that's better than what I had when I was in Boston. So,
but I definitely feel like maybe the mac and cheese was from someone who might have been from Boston or something like that, because it really, the flavor just was not there at all. Like I said, it's really odd because the sandwiches are good. I've had the sandwiches;
yeah.
they taste good, they're flavorful, but the mac and cheese was just very lacking. And the fact that you could have done so much better just by getting Kraft and making mac and cheese that way really speaks volumes to me.
All right. Well, my dissuasion surprisingly is not food related, but my dissuasion is actually going to be it, unless it is like the only way you can play it and you just really want to play in handheld mode. I gotta dissuade you from playing Horizon Forbidden West on Steam Deck. It's just, the performance is just not very good. I mean, I will still probably end up playing it some that way, but I feel like with the amount of action, and particularly like the need to be more precise in shots, if you want to actually like be able to knock parts off of monsters and everything, it's just not really that great. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, ran kind of similarly. I think it ran definitely better. It was easier to maintain 30. But that one, you don't have to deal with precision much at all. So it wasn't really a big deal. It was a lot easier from that standpoint. But it's just Horizon, like, being able to get precision hits is really important a lot of the time to make your fights a lot easier, and it's just harder to do when your frame rate drops into the 20s. So, yeah. That's what I'm going to have to say about that. Anything else?
Just a quick
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question. Were you able to use gyro controls
Yes.
with... Okay.
It actually has gyro as an option within the game menus. They added that with both Horizon and God of War Ragnarok. They added in gyro.
Nice.
Which is good. I'm very glad they did that, because it helps a lot. Oh, speaking of which, how's gyro been working for you on BioShock? Has it been helpful?
Yes. I meant to mention that. I did turn it on, and it definitely is helping quite a bit with aiming. And I do want to thank you for just telling me to do that, because that did improve some stuff there.
Yeah, the Switch really impressed on me how helpful that was, like between like Splatoon and especially like Doom. Made a big difference in Doom, because I mean, Doom, it's only 30 frames per second on the Switch, and having that gyro in there just makes such a massive difference in how easy it is to aim. And I mean, like, I've on the Steam Deck, I've used it basically in every game where you have that option. I remember one thing I did do a while back. This is going a little off topic, but is still related. Back when gyro was not like a normal thing that you could have on PC with most controllers, I had used my Switch Pro controller on PC, and I used it with Shadow of Mordor, and being able to do the gyro aiming with that was just fantastic. It made it so much better for aiming, because I use my bow a lot. Of course, that's just a fantastic game in general. I really need to finish Shadow of War, though. Well, I probably just need to restart it, because it's been years since I played it. Or either that, or just figure out where I left off and continue on, because I do have, still my save, and it's on Steam, and it runs very, very well on Steam Deck. It did 60 on the base Steam Deck, so it might do 90 on the OLED. Not sure. Haven't tried it, but anyway. That's enough of that. So, alright. Where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That is IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. Because I was at my sister's house through the entirety of the previous week, I did not have any time for putting out any content. But because I'm back now, I should definitely have something up on Saturday. I just need to record one clip, and then I can just go ahead, edit everything, and toss it out.
Nice. Definitely will look forward to that. Well, you can find me on YouTube at TheFrozenGamer87. Of course, I do these regular Steam Deck versus Switch OLED comparison videos. Just despite what people might think, it's not meant to dunk on the Switch. It's not meant to do anything like that. I just like showing how these games look on these OLED screens, because the OLED makes a big difference in a lot of games. And so far, I have not done any where the Switch version has been terrible. There will come some of those eventually, because some of them I have to show, I want to show the comparison. It's like, okay, for every good Switch port, or at least good as far as I'm concerned, there are definitely ones like Outer Worlds or Immortals Phoenix Rising that are not very good ports, at least in terms of visuals. Like, they look really bad. Thankfully, Immortals at least runs well enough. Like, I played through the entire game on the Switch long before I got it on Steam, so thankfully that one has a cross save. Very glad that it has cross save. When I got on Steam, it's like, if I want to play this and do the DLC, I do not want to start over. No, thank you. Not a chance, and I don't have to. So, but anyway, so I did not put one out this past week just because of doing the 24-hour stream and everything like that. I don't expect anyone to really check out the 24-hour stream because it's a lot of stuff to check out. But if you're really bored, you just want to see some games and things like that, that'll be a good place to check it out. Otherwise, if I have time, I will try to get the those streams downloaded so that I can clip them up and add some clips to this podcast. Probably not going to happen, but we'll just kind of see how tomorrow goes and what kind of time I have. But my next comparison that's going up is going to be BioShock Infinite. I will say ahead of time, that's another one where it runs basically 90 frames per second almost the entire time. Max settings, max field of view, all that. I mean, the game came out 11 years ago originally, so it's not surprising in the least that it runs as well as it does on the Steam Deck. But yeah, that'll be a good comparison. And then the following week, I'm planning to do Nier Automata, because that one I've been looking forward to doing the comparison. That'll be a cool one to take a look at, because I liked the Switch version, but obviously it just runs so much better on the Steam Deck. So, but then I also have my YouTube channel that's my cooking channel called Not Authentic But Delicious. This past week I put out the recipe for what has been called the Gator Pizza. It's actually just basically like a special kind of meat lovers pizza that there was this restaurant in Alaska that made this pizza, and my wife and I tried it on our honeymoon and had it again the following year when we went back to that location for our anniversary. And unfortunately, when we went out in 2020, they were closed permanently, so we did not get to go there a third time. But I did my best clone with a few touches of my own, and it's a really good pizza. And I watched the recipe again after I published it, and was like, okay, that's what I'm making for pizza on Friday night, because it looks so good. I don't know which recipe I'm putting up next. I have like at least 2 or 3 more recipes recorded, but I might do shakshuka, because it's a completely random one, and it's one I've had recorded for a long time. It's like either that, it's between that and I think, let's see here, I have some homemade meatballs, which I think is kind of more of just like a side thing. Oh yeah, I have a Philly cheesesteak pizza. I forgot about that. That's another option. Let's see here. What else do I have? Oh, taco pizza. I forgot I did that. I recorded that one. I have to put that one up as well. So I think that's basically what I'm down to. Is it's like the 2 kinds of pizza, shakshuka, and the meatballs. I think that those are the only ones I have left that are recorded currently. Which means I'm gonna actually have to start recording more stuff soon. But anyway, I'll get to that when I get to that. So
Very nice.
I think that is it. So, last chance. Anything you want to say before we close out for the night?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. I realize I do not have an outro written up, so I'm going to do my best to wing it again. And hopefully this time I can come up with something funny. So, I'm the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I Am Zeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, if you can, check out my recipes. Make one of those pizzas that I made, because they're all really, really freaking good. Orange Box Podcast, out.